moving on.
Anyway,
Also,
British Medical Association.
British Medical Association, the second case. This one you've actually heard a little more about, Levi, since we've been working on it for the past few weeks. For those who don't know, this week's video on Anna Montgomery wasn't planned until like 2 days before it was published. We had another video already prepared and I was getting ready to record and everything. But then Anna Montgomery happened. We'll come back to that in a bit. So this kind of got put back.
I actually forgot about that video we were working on because it feels like it happened 100 years ago.
That is sadly the way the current situation is warping time. But anyway, for those who don't know, the British Medical Association, which is the largest medical association in the UK, it is the union, the trade union for all the doctors in the UK, consisting of 159,000 doctors and 19,000 medical students, recently had their annual conference. Now, at that conference, a bill was forwarded. I'm just going to double check the specific details for a second. All of this is available in the description down below. There is a link to a Google document. But yes, anyway, the Northwest Regional Council forwarded a motion that stated the following, quote, that this meeting affirms the rights of transgender and non-binary individuals to access healthcare and live their lives with dignity, including having their identity respected, and calls upon the government to, point 1, allow transgender and non-binary individuals to gain legal recognition by their gender by witnessed sworn statement. Point 2, ensure that under 18s are able to access healthcare in line with existing principles of consent established by UK case laws and guidelines published by the public bodies which set the standards for healthcare. Point 3, enable trans people to receive healthcare in settings appropriate to their gender identity. And point 4, ensure trans healthcare workers are able to access facilities appropriate to their to the gender they identify as. And number 5, which I always keep forgetting, ensure trans people are able to access gender spaces in line with the gender they identify as. This is the biggest institution in the UK that represents all doctors here, and it has come out and stated in no ambiguous terms that trans people should be supported in being allowed to identify as their gender, that under 18s should have access to healthcare in line with existing standards such as Gaelic competence, and sadly it was massively underreported because it is a big strive in the right direction. One thing to note specifically about this case is puberty blockers were raised at the conversation, at the debate, as this motion was being passed, but the speculation surrounding the unconfirmed side effects were not found to merit changing the motions. So said motions passed completely without change. So again, all the fear-mongering that's going on in the UK about... I do have duct tape on my headset, sorry. All the fear-mongering going on in the UK about the apparent effects of puberty blockers on minors and how it apparently leads to osteoporosis and cardiac problems, the medical establishment in the UK assessed those claims and found them to be completely baseless. There was no reason to worry about them or be concerned about them in any special regard. Most probably because of said medications actually being developed and first used on cis children, only later being given to trans children.
It's really great that, of course, all that speculation was shut down, but I do want to talk about that a bit, be negative like I can be. Because, of course, just because the speculation was shut down by the BMA does not mean that people will not continue to raise it amongst themselves. And yeah, I have thoughts on this. I have some notes now. So when I did some research on like the scrutiny behind why people were scrutinizing puberty blockers, I found that a very common argument, especially one that the BBC put out, was that like the effects of puberty blockers aren't fully understood, and if if you're not careful about it, that can be a very convincing argument, like, oh, it's dangerous, we don't know what could happen. And that can be a valid argument sometimes. With a very new or experimental treatment, it's fair to say, don't do this because we don't quite know what it will do.
Yeah.
But you can turn that argument up to 11. And in the case of puberty blockers, we've been using them for decades. We have lots of studies on the matter. We have lots of people who have used them without issue. But we don't know everything about how they work. You can point to any random part of the body. You can say, we don't fully know how this affects the heart. We don't fully know how this affects the brain. We don't know how this affects the spleen. There could be some damage. And you can't disprove that because we don't know everything. And that's basically what the BBC is doing. That's basically what transphobes have been doing. And it's basically the God of the gaps argument. Until we can break everything down to the subatomic level and explain how it will all work and break open the universe and space and time, it's not going to be good enough for them. So we do have to be careful about that argument and make sure we call it out and demand some evidence and demand, where have you seen this go wrong? What is your evidence?
Yeah, so...
Because this is a very...
That's like... No,
yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, because this is a very, very tested, well-established treatment. And then the other thing is, in the article that's in the notes, what's the article about the speculation around unconfirmed side effects, there are also mentions of women's sex-based rights. And this is another thing I feel like people pass up way too much. We hear transphobes all the time saying, oh, women's sex-based rights are under attack. This will conflict with women's sex-based rights. And the thing that we don't call out enough is that women's sex-based rights aren't a thing. From what I can tell, I have never seen or heard of this being used outside of transphobic arguments in the last 10 years or so. I've never seen this in feminist literature that I've tried to look into. I've never seen this in law. And that is because rights don't work that way. The way you're protected, like your sex is a protected characteristic, meaning that you can't be treated less favorably for it, not that you get a special selection of rights that apply to that specific group.
Okay, there's several things I've just got to do. First of all, thanks to Charlie Fritz. It's wonderful for your donation of €5, 49. Is it euro cents? I do not know what the I think it's euro cents. I think it's right. As for what puberty blockers are used for in cis children, it's precocious puberty, also known as early onset puberty. We'll come to what is the trans hysteria in a second. It is sense, that's good. But first of all, let's check if Levi has anything else to add.
Yeah, sorry, my brain kind of short-circuited there. I've had this problem recently where my brain is like crashing and rebooting constantly. I've got notes here, but I'm sorry, I'll hopefully get better at this.
Okay.
But yeah, sex is a protected characteristic, meaning you can't be treated less favorably. But this sex-based rights narrative is very easy to believe because it's very easy to imagine that, years ago, the feminists had an uprising and secured rights for women to protect them. It's very easy to imagine that, but that doesn't work. And when you think about it, of course it doesn't work. What would it mean for someone to have special rights to protect them from, for example, the right to get, an abortion? What would it mean to have a special right saying, yes, women can get an abortion? It needs to have some sort of underlying logic. And from what I can tell, from my cursory research, very cursory research, I must add, is that the underlying logic is either equality or it's universal human rights. So they will say, for example, you should be able to get a safe abortion because we would not bar a man from reproductive health care, or they'll say you should be able to get a safe abortion because everyone has the right to access necessary medical care and this is necessary. So you don't have rights for a particular characteristic, you just have your universal human rights and you have the right to equality, and that's where your rights are derived from. Women's sex-based rights are not a thing.
They have protections to ensure those rights are upheld. That's the difference.